Welcome to Emovura Audiobooks channel. This is playlist of Emovura Crime Files, Rewind, where every story starts at the end. The story is called The Best Man. Get comfortable. Here's where it ends. The end. Nicholas collapsed mid-toast, champagne glass somehow still upright in his hand, thin foam sliding slowly down over his knuckles onto the crisp white tablecloth below. The microphone he'd just been holding rolling off the table with a loud, ugly feedback screech of everyone gathered in that reception hall, over 100 guests suddenly on their feet, chairs scraping back all at once. Only his best man Felix didn't scream, didn't lunge forward, didn't so much as visibly flinch at the sound. He stood exactly where he'd been standing, glass still in his own hand, watching with an expression the catering staff would later describe uncomfortably as patient. The police, arriving nearly 20 minutes later through a crowd of stunned wedding guests, still in their formal wear, found that particular unnatural stillness far more convincing, in the end, than any single fingerprint they eventually lifted off the shattered glass. One officer would later note in his report that Felix had asked calmly whether the ceremony's paperwork had already been filed with the county. A strange question, he wrote, for a man whose best friend was dying on the floor beside him. Hours earlier, Felix had carefully swapped Nicholas's champagne flute during the long round of toasts, timing the switch with a precision that genuinely surprised even himself as he did it. Hands steadier than he expected, carried out after the vows had already been spoken aloud, but carefully before the marriage certificate was due to be formally signed at the very end of dinner, back in the small side room set up for exactly that purpose. He'd practiced the swap twice at home with two identical glasses of ginger ale, timing himself with his phone, making sure his sleeve covered the motion for the full 2 seconds it took. He believed, with total and unshakable conviction, that the exact timing of that narrow window mattered enormously to everything that came after it. He believed that whole long afternoon a great many things that simply were not true. Days earlier, days before the wedding itself, the family's longtime lawyer had confirmed it to Felix plainly, almost casually. Over a phone call Felix had specifically and carefully engineered to sound like idle curiosity. Their grandfather's substantial trust would vest fully in Nicholas the very moment he was legally married, provided only that he lived to see the entire day through to its end. If Nicholas were to die before that certificate was formally signed, the whole trust would default instead cleanly and automatically to Felix. Felix had asked 3 follow-up questions before he let himself hang up, each one designed to sound like a brother's harmless curiosity about the family's finances. The lawyer, flattered to be asked, answered every one of them in full. Weeks earlier, quietly drowning in debt from a failed business venture nobody else in the family fully understood the size of, Felix had finally worked up the nerve to ask Nicholas for a loan over dinner one night. Nicholas had refused him, gently, reasonably, the way he refused most awkward requests from people he loved. And Felix had smiled warmly, said he understood completely, and began that very same evening, alone in his car in the parking lot, deciding quietly that he didn't understand at all, not anymore. The beginning. Their grandfather had written the trust decades earlier, specifically, deliberately, to pit the 2 young grandsons against one another, to see who deserved it more. He used to say cheerfully at every single family dinner, laughing into his wine glass, as if rivalry itself were simply another kind of inheritance, worth passing quietly down the family line alongside the money. What Felix never learned, even as 2 officers led him calmly past the untouched wedding cake still standing on its table, was that Nicholas, sensing exactly this kind of quiet family pressure building for years now, watching Felix's business struggles from a careful distance, had gone ahead and signed the marriage certificate early that same morning, entirely as a private surprise for his new bride, before the ceremony had even begun. The trust had already fully vested hours before the very first toast was ever raised. The murder Felix committed that evening for money had already, by the moment he actually committed it, stopped being able to buy him anything at all. Thanks for rewinding this one with us on Emovura Crime Files. If you want to catch the next one, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. A new rewind story. I'll see you in the next one.